Good morning. A great Jewish philosopher passed away last week. His name was Jackie Mason. And one of his great lines was, he said, life is not about money. It's all about love. But fortunately, I love money. Well, in America we say that life is about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what would Judaism say about that? Would Judaism agree? And the answer is Judaism would say that it's all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of holiness. Because you can't pursue happiness head on. What you can pursue is holiness. And when you pursue holiness, the happiness comes automatically. And where do you find that? In this week's Torah portion. At the end of this week's Torah portion, it talks about the tithes, the offerings, the percentage that a Jew has to give of his crop to charity, and then it talks about the holidays. And there's a constant refrain found in these sections. When the Torah talks about the Jew bringing the second tithe, the Maaser Sheni, the Torah says, take it and bring it to Jerusalem and rejoice before God. And then the Torah says, you, your family, your son, your daughter, your servants, your maidservants, the stranger, the Levite, the widow, and the orphan. And then, v'samachta, you will rejoice before God, or you shall rejoice before God. And then by each of the holidays, the Torah tells us again the same idea. Celebrate the holidays. With whom? You, your family, your children, your servants, the Levite, the stranger, the widow, the orphan. And the Torah is teaching us a fundamental principle, that to achieve real joy in life, you can't just live selfishly. You can't just celebrate the joy by yourself alone, your own blessings, your own success. True joy is when it's shared with others. And when you pursue not just happiness, but holiness, which is sharing your blessings and your prosperity and your success with others, giving to the needy, to the poor, to the downtrodden, to the most vulnerable, then you will fulfill the commandment of being joyous. But not only that, there's a promise. You will find true joy. And here's the simple recipe in the Torah for happiness. Something that Jews have practiced for thousands of years. When you are blessed, share your blessings with others. Hachnasat orchim, welcoming guests into our home, on every is a fundamental principle of Judaism. So much so that the opening of the Passover Seder is, whoever is hungry, let them come and eat. And this is something that we witnessed throughout Jewish communities. A matter of fact, in many Jewish communities, when you make a wedding, there is a custom to set a special table for anyone who is poor and hungry to come and eat. You have all your distinguished wedding guests and then a random table for whoever wants to show up to eat a meal because they're hungry. That's the finest Jewish tradition. A Shabbat table is not complete when it's just you and your family. You always need guests, you always need visitors, you always need people who don't have a place to eat. When you go to Israel, you see this because people come to Israel from all over the world, and people in Israel open their homes and invite everyone who needs a meal in. I always tell about Jeff Seidel, who stands behind the Kotel on Friday night. He's been doing this for 30 years. And anyone who needs a place to eat comes up to him. And he has a list of families that are welcoming guests into their home. And he sends them to random addresses where these guests, whether it's one person, two people, five people, students, whoever needs a place to eat, and they come and they knock on people's doors in Jerusalem and say, Jeff Seidel sent me to have a meal. I have to tell you that when we were now in Israel, we stopped in a community to do some touring and some shopping, and Zichron Yaakov. And I was walking down the street in Zichron, and as I'm walking down the street, I run into this woman. I asked her for some directions. She speaks English, and she tells me she's made Aliyah. I said, where'd you make Aliyah from? She said, from Boca Raton. I said, really? I'm from Palm Beach. We had a beautiful chat on the corner. And then she says to me, if you ever come back to Israel and you need a place to stay, we have a little guest house behind our house, and you're always welcome to stay. And I smiled. I said, thank you. And she looked at me and she said, no, really, you're always welcome to stay at my house. I don't even know her last name. All I know is that her name is Judy. And she said to me with all sincerity, you're welcome to stay at my home. And she hands me her information, her email, and says, call me anytime. I'll be delighted to host you. That's the spirit of generosity that brings and leads to true joy in our lives. Have a wonderful day.